You ever wonder what it feels like to come home and realize your biggest battle wasn't overseas, but waiting for you in your own family? People think betrayal happens in war zones, that the worst wounds come from enemies with guns. But that's not always true. Sometimes, the people who say they love you are the ones holding the knife. This is not just a story about military service, or cyber warfare, or identity theft. It's about what happens when the truth is buried under blood ties, and what it takes to dig it back up. If you're ready to hear the rest, subscribe to the channel, hit that like button, and leave a comment. Tell me what you would have done in my place. Because trust me, by the end of this story, you're going to ask yourself that exact question. My name is Cassie Moore. I'm 34 years old, born and raised in Omaha, Nebraska. I used to think I understood what it meant to serve, to give something up for something bigger. But I was wrong. I spent 12 years in the U.S. Army, most of it behind locked steel doors and biometric scanners, surrounded by humming servers and pale blue light. My battlefield wasn't dirt and blood. It was firewalls, payloads, code injections, black screens blinking with invisible wars. I worked in Cyber Defense Command, where threats didn't wear uniforms and bullets were lines of malicious code. I helped stop attacks before they began. I watched global chaos get diffused with a silent keystroke. I operated in silence, signed NDAs thicker than any Bible, and held truths no civilian would believe. People think military service is about guns and grit. But in my unit, loyalty was the currency. Trust wasn't earned. It was mandated, built through shared silence, classified files, and invisible scars. I gave up holidays, relationships, sleep. I gave up myself. When I retired, I didn't expect parades. But I thought, maybe a warm welcome, a porch light left on, familiar voices, a chair still waiting at the dinner table. Instead, I returned to a house that felt like a museum of someone else's life. The walls were the same pale yellow I remembered, the front porch still sagged at the edge, but everything was different. Colder, smaller. My key still worked, but the lock felt unfamiliar in my hand. The air inside smelled of lavender and something sour underneath, like something dying behind fresh paint. My mother hugged me, stiff, rehearsed. My father barely looked up from his newspaper, muttered something about the long trip back. My little brother Justin avoided eye contact completely. He hadn't been little in years, and now stood a few inches taller than me, with a jaw that never stopped clenching. His girlfriend Skylar gave me that thin smile people reserve for problem guests. Dinner that night was meatloaf. My mother still used Ritz crackers in it, like always. I ate in silence while the others talked around me, as if I was just some guest passing through. Then, somewhere between the green beans and dessert, my father cleared his throat. "You've been gone a long time, Cass." I nodded. 12 years. You didn't come back for your mother's surgery, or Justin's graduation, or the holidays. I was deployed, I said evenly. Classified assignment. You always have an excuse. I stared at him. I served. And we didn't? Justin's voice cracked like a whip. We were here, picking up the pieces. You don't get to play the martyr. I blinked. I didn't come back for applause. No, Skylar interrupted smoothly. You came back for the house, right? The money? I dropped my fork. What? You think you can disappear for over a decade, my mother said, her voice trembling, and still claim everything like nothing's changed? My father folded his arms. We've been maintaining this house, paying taxes. Justin's the one who's been here. He's earned it. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. You want the house? We want what's fair, my mother said. And what about my savings? I asked, my voice calm, too calm. Justin's eyes flicked away. What savings? I stood up. My legs felt stiff from the long drive, or maybe from something deeper, colder. I looked around the room. A family portrait still hung crooked on the wall, us smiling at a lake 20 years ago. A lie, frozen in time. I didn't scream. I didn't argue. I nodded once, went to my old room, and lay awake in the dark. The next morning, my bank accounts were frozen. That's when I knew. Something was very wrong. But I didn't react. Not yet. I'd learned long ago that you don't move until you see the full field. You wait. You listen. And most importantly, you never assume the enemy is far away. Sometimes they live just down the hall. I didn't leave the house right away. Maybe part of me still believed it was a misunderstanding, that it could be undone with a conversation, a few calm explanations. But I'd worked in places where calm didn't mean peace. It meant concealment. The next morning, I went down to the kitchen before anyone else. The silence was thick, the kind that presses against your ribs. I brewed coffee with the same old machine, the one I'd bought for Mom when I was 20. The carafe still had the faint scratch where Justin had dropped it. I opened my banking app while the coffee dripped. Still frozen. Not a glitch. Not temporary maintenance. Access denied. A tight knot formed in my chest. I knew that kind of freeze. I'd seen it happen to suspects in real time, when internal threat flagged a profile for suspicious activity. It wasn't just a closed account. Someone had flagged me. I tried calling the bank. They were polite. Overly so. Referred me to a compliance office. I asked for a record of who initiated the freeze. "I'm sorry, Ms. Moore," the voice said. "That information is restricted." Click. I stared at my reflection in the dark kitchen window. A woman I barely recognized anymore. Pale eyes, hair shorter than it used to be. Expression like tempered steel. A soldier, still on alert. Still at war. By the time the rest of them wandered in, Mom in her robe, Dad with his paper, Skylar in yoga pants and a smile too polished, I'd already started collecting clues. Justin came down last, yawning like he hadn't a care in the world. "Coffee?" he asked, reaching past me. I watched him pour. Steady hands, calm, too calm. "You look tired," I said. He shrugged. Sky snores. Skylar giggled like that was adorable. I sipped my coffee and smiled. "That's funny. I used to snore too. But I had a CPAP during my last deployment. Sleep apnea." No one responded. "You'd be surprised how much data you can get from breathing patterns," I added, watching their faces. "Encrypted audio channels, microsignals." Still no response, but Skylar's smile twitched. Later that day, I drove into town, visited the courthouse, pulled property records on the house. There it was, a quiet little document, filed 3 weeks before my return. Petition to transfer partial ownership of the Moore family property, filed by Justin, signed, supposedly, by me. Forgery. It was good. Whoever did it had studied my signature, but not well enough. I made photocopies and left. That night, Justin knocked on my door. No warning, no small talk. Just leaned in the doorway with that same smirk he used to wear when he stole quarters from my dresser. "You snooping around?" I didn't answer. "Just curious," he said, stepping inside. "You know, about what happens next." I closed the laptop on my knees. "You tell me." He chuckled. "Look, Cass, you were gone. You can't just drop back into everyone's lives and expect nothing to change. Things evolved." "Evolved?" "We needed the money. Skylar's trying to start her own business. Mom and Dad are older now. You weren't using any of it." "So you helped yourself?" He shrugged. "Don't be dramatic." I stood up slowly, and for a moment, he flinched. Old reflexes. He still remembered the night I broke a guy's jaw for touching my arm without permission. He remembered what I was trained for. Get out of my room, I said. He did, but not before leaving one more gift. Oh, he added just before closing the door. You might want to check your DD-214. Pretty sure the VA doesn't consider cybertext to be combat anymore. Would suck if your benefits vanished. The door clicked shut. That night I didn't sleep. I didn't cry either. I made a list. Every password I'd used in the past 10 years. Every device I'd logged into while overseas. Every server we'd connected to during joint operations. Every person who had access to my ID. And then, I opened a secure partition on my laptop, one I hadn't touched since 2021, and launched a virtual sandbox. I ran a scan on the metadata from my old emails, files, cloud storage. At first, nothing. Then I noticed something strange. There were sign-ins to my old military server account. After my discharge, someone had spoofed my identity from this house. I stared at the IP address, and then I realized something I hadn't let myself consider before. This wasn't just about greed, it was about access. They hadn't just stolen from me, they were using me. And the deeper I dug, the more I began to see. The rabbit hole didn't stop at the front porch. It went deeper, into networks, accounts, shell companies, even encrypted government emails. Someone had opened doors that should have stayed locked, and they'd used my name to do it. The house was still, too still, like it knew I was onto something. I sat at the edge of my bed in the dark, laptop glowing faintly. The scan results were still ticking through, ghost traces of unauthorized logins, location pings masked with VPNs. But whoever had done this had made a mistake. They got greedy. They didn't just access my inactive military ID, they used it to penetrate a database that even I had no clearance for. That's when I called Nick. He picked up on the second ring. Moore? Yeah, I whispered. I need a trace. Quiet. A pause. Where are you? Home. Jesus, you're there? Yeah. Another pause. Tell me exactly what you found. By sunrise, Nick had full access to my sandbox environment. We'd served together in Texas back in 15. Him on signals intel, me embedded in crypto defense. He'd gotten out 2 years before me, now ran a small threat analysis company. Private sector, low profile, paranoid enough to trust. While he worked from his side, I started mapping the pieces physically. Literally. I printed records, pinned screenshots, drew lines between accounts and aliases. My walls started to resemble something between a detective's bulletin board and a war room. Justin had access to tech. That wasn't a secret. He freelanced in IT support, claimed to fix code and optimize back-end stacks, whatever that meant. But what I was seeing wasn't freelance. This was something else. For starters, someone had spoofed a retired NSA credential set, mine, and used it to access a Veterans Affairs subdirectory. Not for health records, but for digital identities. Old soldiers, deployed personnel, some dead, some alive. The purpose? Phishing networks, data cloning, identity harvesting, and something deeper, more sinister, strategic compromise. Veterans with clean records being tied to shell charities that didn't exist. False donations, falsified IRS forms. Why use my name? Because I had a clearance trail. A long one. Clean. And I'd been off-grid. Out of sight. No social media, no hometown visits, no paper trail. For 12 years, I was a ghost wrapped in the flag, the perfect camouflage. But ghosts have a way of showing up when least expected. Nick called me 2 days later. You're not gonna like this. Tell me anyway. I reverse traced the IP tunnel. Your brother's system is the anchor node. My stomach dropped. He's the one routing it? He's the one controlling it. I stared out the window. Justin was in the backyard tossing a football to himself. Lazy, casual, whistling. "There's more," Nick said. "Skylar has accounts in Belize, Cayman, and a digital wallet that links back to something we've seen before." I said nothing. "You remember the ghost circuit leak from 19? Of course. That cluster of data ended up on a dark mail node registered to an entity called Haven Wells Institute. That shell company linked to Syrian firmware subversion?" "Exactly. Guess who just transferred $5,000 from an account labeled HWI Recovery Fund?" I closed my eyes. Skylar. Bingo. I hung up the phone without saying goodbye. That night, I took a walk around the block, quiet, slow, controlled. I needed to be seen doing something normal. But inside my chest, my heart was pounding like a hammer. When I returned, I found my door cracked open. My laptop was still warm. Someone had touched it. I powered it off immediately. I didn't confront them. Not yet. Not even after I found a single piece of printer paper tucked beneath my bed. "You don't know what you're doing. Walk away." Typed. Anonymous. Meant to rattle me. But I'd seen worse. That night, I left the house at 2 a.m., drove an hour to a veterans center I used to help fund, and borrowed one of their old air-gapped systems. No Wi-Fi, no Bluetooth, no mic. I uploaded my full archive to a cold server and encrypted it 6 layers deep. Then I prepared what we used to call a flash trigger. One document, one page, containing exactly the right sequence of data to burn everything open if I ever needed to. I printed that page, folded it twice, slid it into a legal envelope, and returned home before dawn. By then, the house no longer felt like a house. It was a stage, and we were actors waiting for the curtain to fall. The next morning, I found my mother in the kitchen, slicing bananas over her cereal. She didn't look up. "You've lost weight," she said casually. "You look thin." "I'm eating," I lied. "You were always so dramatic, even as a child." I leaned against the counter. "You ever wonder why I never brought anyone home?" She glanced at me, eyes calm but empty. "I always assumed the army made you strange." "Maybe," I said. "But maybe I knew what I'd be bringing them into." She didn't reply. And then I asked, softly, "Why did you let them use my name, Mom?" Her hand paused over the spoon. Her eyes locked on mine. And for the first time, I saw it. Not confusion, not denial, but recognition. She knew. But she said nothing. She didn't need to. Because in that moment, I understood. This wasn't just Justin and Skylar. This was all of them. The whole family. All of it. The hearing wasn't supposed to last more than 20 minutes. It was just a routine civil dispute, on paper. One sibling challenging the legitimacy of a property transfer and inheritance claim. Nothing criminal, nothing dramatic. Just ink, paper, signatures, and silence. But the courtroom felt heavier than it should have. The ceiling fans barely stirred. The clock above the judge's bench ticked louder than it had any right to, and in the row behind me sat 3 people I had once called family. My father in a pressed shirt, hands folded too tightly. My mother with her church pearls and a blank stare that had once comforted me as a child. And Justin, smiling, relaxed, like he already knew the outcome. Skylar didn't come. She was conveniently out of state. The judge cleared her throat. "Ms. Moore, you may proceed." I stood. My palms were dry, my voice calm. I looked directly at my brother. "I'm not here because of the house," I said, "or the money, or the frozen accounts." I let my eyes sweep to my parents. "I'm here because someone turned my name into a weapon, and I want the truth on record." I handed the bailiff a single envelope. Thin, silent, deadly. The page inside looked like nothing. A few lines of code, a set of IDs, 3 IP addresses, 1 timestamp, and 1 key name tied to an international data breach that nearly destabilized a foreign embassy. The judge stared at the sheet, frowning. "What is this?" "It's a breadcrumb," I said. "That's all I'm allowed to show you. But it's enough." The prosecution's table shifted. A man in a suit leaned forward. The court clerk whispered something. Then another. 10 seconds later, the bailiff's radio crackled. Federal agents were already in the building. Justin stood up. "This is bullshit." Two men entered from the back. No sirens, no shouting, just clean, practiced motion. One handed a document to the judge. The judge looked at it, then at me. "Ms. Moore, you are hereby excused from further civil proceedings. This case is being escalated to federal jurisdiction. All defendants are now under active investigation." My mother gasped. My father said nothing. Justin laughed, dry, cracked, desperate. "You think you've won?" he spat. "You think this changes anything? You're still nothing." I turned to face him fully. "I was nothing to you because I never lied for you. That's the difference." As they were escorted out, I watched them closely. Not with rage, not with pity, but with clarity. Like finally seeing rot beneath the wallpaper. It didn't feel like victory. It felt like survival. Later, I sat on the courthouse steps, the fall sun painting everything in shades of cold gold. I should have felt relieved. I didn't. I felt hollow. Like the war was over, but the battlefield still echoed. Nick called me. "It's done," he said. "Interpol confirmed the shell company links. They'll issue an alert on Skylar within the week." "Thanks. You okay?" "No," I said. "But I will be." After that, I didn't go back to the house. I didn't want it. Let the government comb through the walls. I'd taken what I needed. Flash drives, files, a few old photographs of myself before I started disappearing. In the weeks that followed, people came out of the shadows. Veterans. Men and women who'd had their benefits vanish, their accounts drained, their names used like keys in locks they never touched. People too proud to ask for help, too trained to show fear. So I built something. Not a charity, not a foundation with gala dinners and silk ribbons. I called it the Hollow Point Initiative. It started as a database, then a team, then a mission. We track stolen identities. We expose silent fraud. We retrace the steps that predators count on being forgotten. I trained others like me to fight in this new battlefield, one of pixels and proxies and courtrooms. We fought not for medals, but for names. Real names. Months later, I gave a talk at a small veterans center in Colorado. Afterward, an older man approached me. Vietnam vet. Cane, oxygen tank, shaky hands. "I thought we were just getting old and sloppy," he said. "But it wasn't us, was it?" I shook my head. "No, it was them. And it's over now." He nodded. "Thank you, ma'am." That night, I sat alone in my office, a warm lamp glowing over stacks of active cases. Outside, the city was quiet, calm, safe, maybe. On the wall behind me was a photo, an old one, me in uniform, standing outside a hangar in Qatar. Sun in my eyes. No smile. Next to it, a new one. Me and 5 others. All former soldiers, now digital guardians. We don't wear uniforms anymore, but we still serve. And now, when people ask who I am, I tell them the truth. My name is Cassie Moore. I was betrayed by the people who raised me. I was used. And I fought back. Not with weapons. With proof. With patience. And with fire that doesn't burn skin, just lies. The kind of fire that spreads. Quiet. Relentless. And impossible to stop.